Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Business of Business podcast, Two Daughters and Their Dad. I'm your host, Stacey J. Dempsey, and thankfully, like always, I have the one and only dad and one of the daughters. Good morning
Good
to the
morning.
both of you.
Good morning.
So today we wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about what it looks like to have a contingency plan. At this point, we've all lived through COVID and the surprise of all of that. But if you are thinking about being in business or you've been in business for any length of time, you know that things kind of pop up that maybe you haven't thought through or had a backup plan. But Dad talked a little bit about what having, a contingency plan can look like, whether it's an internal or an external source. So, Dad, why don't you share with our listeners a little bit about the difference of the two, and then how we can prepare for a backup plan?
Yeah, well, contingencies, as was already mentioned, are going to happen now. Clearly, when COVID came, it just took the world by surprise. So none of us were prepared for that magnitude, and I don't think that you can even think about how to plan for that exactly. Even though we learned a lot, and we are better prepared maybe now than what we were certainly before. But I'm thinking more along the lines of, just the day-to-day things that, that can happen, in life, that can impact your business. So when I'm talking about internal contingencies, I'm thinking about, things such as, you getting sick, or even worse, passing away. Or if you have a key employee and that person happens to get sick or pass away, or if you have a business partner or partners and something like that happens, what's the plan? How are you going to address that? Because again, we don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. So thinking through, all right, where am I vulnerable? In my business internally, for things like that, so, obviously if you're the business owner and the primary driver of your business from a revenue standpoint and everything else, well, clearly, you want to make sure you have some level of planning done that's going to protect, your family or your loved ones. Because if something happens to you, then, clearly, business is going to suffer. Income and revenue is going to drop. It might just fall off the cliff. So, making sure that you have the right kind of insurance in place, whether it's life insurance or disability insurance, certainly health insurance, having the right type of insurances in place so that, if you can't show up to drive your business, the next day, that, especially if it's something that, you don't want to put your family in a position they have to force sell assets, just to generate some money, especially if you put work into building your business, if it has to go up for a fire sale, then your heirs or your family's only going to get 25 cents on the dollar, at best 50. So just having a good plan in place would prevent you from having to force sell your business. And so that's an internal. You also have, if you have a key person that is very instrumental in your business and driving revenue to your business, or giving you a level of or supporting you so that you can go out and drive revenue, whatever it may be, having, again, the same thing. What happens if they can't show up tomorrow? How's that going to impact your business? If they become disabled, if they pass away, if they get sick, any of those things, will have an impact on your business. So how do you deal with that? And what kind of plan? So again, you can use insurance, but for key man type of insurance, which is the most common, approach is to, giving you that protection. If you have a partner or multiple partners, what happens if something happens to one of them? Same thing. You have to have a plan, because especially if all the partners are working in the business, because a lot of times what you see is that each partner has a specific role, in the business. Maybe it's based on what their strengths are. So now all of a sudden, you take all those strengths and you put them together and it's really working well. But you pull one of those strengths out, now you've got a real problem, because who's going to pick up that slack? So, those are the kind of things that you want to make sure that you have plans built around. And of course, we work with clients in that area. But, and it's amazing on how many people they think about it, but they don't really sit down and put the necessary work in to kind of get things squared away in case something should happen. So again, those are some examples of an internal contingencies and contingency planning. An external could be, looking at your business and what is driving traffic through your business. Is it technology that's driving a lot of your business? Is it, location that's driving your business? I mean, are you picking up a lot of foot traffic to your business because you're in a business center where there's a significant anchor store, that brings a lot of people in and gives your business exposure? Really looking at, your business and saying, all right, here's what my business is really relying on to drive revenue. Now, what external factors can come in and disrupt that? And then try to think those through to say, all right, recently I saw where, they shut a whole street down in a town for construction. And now these businesses all these retail businesses on that street are trying to figure out how to get people to, come down to their business while the road's shut down. So again, you might not be able to think of everything. But if you think of, all right, what am I most relying on? And, from an external standpoint, and then what are the potential risks to that? That would be a good place to start, in terms of how to think through. What it might tell you is, all right, I am too reliant or overly reliant on this one area. So it's good, but I need to start making sure I don't get comfortable with that. And I need to start building other ways of driving, revenue, driving customers to my business, because that might be gone someday. And I don't want to be left saying, now what do I do? What you would rather be saying is, okay, well, I've got these other ways of driving revenue. Is it going to impact me? Yes, but it's not going to put me out of business. That was one of the things that, when setting up Dempsey Weiss and Associates years ago, we decided that, yes, we're primarily insurance, but we want to have, multiple income streams coming in, obviously where they make sense, it's cohesive in terms of those different income streams, but they're independent. They kind of stand on their own. So, we've seen ebbs and flows, ups and downs, over the years, where some of those revenue streams have, hit a snag along the way, but, we didn't have all of our eggs in that basket. And so it really didn't slow us up very much. So, again, just really understanding, what your business, is relying on, and then what are other ways to drive revenue. Technology, I know, Jen, you have to make sure you've got internet to be able to process sales and those kind of things. So that's an area that you might have to be thinking about, is what if I can't, utilize my technology? What's that going to mean? How do I, that would be more of an external factor.
Right.
And that has happened, in probably 15 years of being in the business, we've lost power maybe 3 times that I can remember. And, not a whole lot we can do when we lose power. But, that's kind of like, well, we just got to shut everything down and move on and get this fixed. But, obviously we have, I think every business once in a while have issues with their internet, and that, is a real pain in the butt. And so before, it was like, all right, let me write your credit card numbers down. And, so there was just really no system that we had in place to handle that situation until we moved into different software where we can save credit cards to the software. So it doesn't, if the internet's down and we can't necessarily run your card for you to pay for your services right now, we can do it when the internet comes back up. So not a huge disruption for the business and not a huge inconvenience for the client. So that was kind of one way. I think as we're kind of talking about this, one thing that's coming up for me is COVID. And so, for when COVID hit, the salon got shut down for 3 months, right? We were not allowed to be open and we were not allowed to do business. And so I remember when that happened, my landlord came and said, hey, listen, you signed a contract and you owe us rent no matter what's happening. And, I called Dad and I was upset by it, right? My initial reaction was, well, this seems a little unfair that I'm literally have no income coming in. And I think, so then Dad's kind of advice is like, listen, you got the money, let's just pay it. And that was the best thing I did, honestly, was to continue to pay my rent when we were shut down, because it gave me leverage when it was time to come back full circle and renegotiate a new lease. I kind of had that in my back pocket where other tenants in the strip mall did not pay their rent. So it really worked for my benefit. And I say that to say cash is king. We all know this, right? So, I think it's important to keep in mind that we keep kind of that emergency fund inside of our business. Can our business, run for 3 months and pay the bills without any income coming in? And if the answer is yes, then that's wonderful. You're ahead of the game here. But if it's no, then let's start focusing on building up some cash. So if something does happen, we have some, wiggle room to be able to float for a little bit, to make sure that that we can continue on. And that was huge for me in my business, that, we were still able to pay our bills and not have any income coming in. So, that's the first place to start, right? And then, we're talking about when I didn't know this, but when I first opened the salon, apparently Dad took out some disability insurance for me. Listen, I'm the most insured person you'll ever know. I don't even know it. You guys got so much insurance on me. I start to think something. But so, then time goes on and Dad's like, I have this policy on you. Here you go. You need to start paying it. So, and it's so important for me to do that, right? Because if I, hurt myself, break my ankle, God forbid, hurt my hand in any way, then I'm physically unable to perform my job. And so that is just a huge benefit for me to have that in my back pocket in case something happens. So I don't even think it has to be on this grand scheme of kind of thinking through what if something crazy happens, but just having some of those safety nets in place to feel more comfortable, to be more secure inside of your business, to say, hey, listen, I got some money in the bank. If something goes left here, I can make decisions off of strength instead of out of a weak point here. So, that's kind of.
Well, that's yeah, no, I mean, thanks for bringing that up, because I mean, that's what we should be doing in our own household budgets, right? I mean, we should always have, depending on your what type of work you do, you probably should have 6 months to 1 year bills, in a savings account. So that way, if something goes sideways and you've lost income, you're not going bankrupt after 1 month, So But, what's interesting is that, sometimes businesses don't think that way, I mean, but it's very same thing. And that's a huge thought there, Jen, because, if you have that, then, let's just take our, shut the street down, scenario. Oh, now they just shut the street down. Yeah, I mean, we're still getting maybe some business because we have some loyal customers, but it's dropped off. But, I can survive it because I've got some money put aside,
Yeah.
And those are the kind of things. And then, you made, I think you said the nugget of the day, and that is that puts you then from a position of strength rather than a position of weakness. And that's what we talked about back when COVID, and that's the very thing we talked about was, you did have the money set aside. Nobody else is paying rent. You pay your rent, and then when it comes back around for that lease renewal, you'll probably make it up with just cutting a good deal because you helped them out, right? Because you could have easily said no. So, and that's how it played out. So that's working from a position of strength in the midst of, some type of potential setback.
And I think that that's really something to recognize is that the reactivity for me, right, is like you're upset. Like this is out of my control. And for business owners, things are going to happen that are completely out of your control. And so my initial reaction is I'm upset because I think it's unfair. And, I get to reach out to my mentor, my dad, who's like, well, let's think clearly, right? Because he has a different perspective. He's like, this is a power move. So we're going to go ahead and do it. I didn't want to. So thankfully, I have dad in my back pocket tell me make good decisions.
Well, and one of the things that, I mean, here's a big one that we didn't bring up, even a recession. I mean, if the economy, we've been through kind of a high inflationary time, where, but, it doesn't, Jen, I know it's probably impacted your business some, but overall, it doesn't seem like it's slowed up the economy a lot. I've lived through a few pretty significant recessions and business, was really impacted. And so, being in a position to, have the financial wherewithal to kind of come through that, because one of the things that happens in those kind of situations is we have a tendency to clamp down and stop investing in our business because all we're hearing every day is recession, and when we're feeling it because we're hitting the business. I mean, it's hitting our bottom line some, but it's at that very opportunity that we need to continue to invest in marketing and advertising because everybody else is pulling back. Everybody else is clamping down saying, ooh, and so, and I think they do it just like that. Ooh, too. So, the point being is if you're in that position of strength, like you talked about, Jen, and you're saying, listen, our competitors are pulling back because they're scared. So they're clamping down on expenses. Here's our opportunity to raise, because what are we going to look like? We're going to look like, hey, yeah, we're still doing well through a recession, even though we might not be doing as well as we are. People might think, but they're going to think we are, and that's going to raise our visibility and our business visibility out in the marketplace. So again, just another reason why to have some financial backing, for when those times come. Dang, selling.
No recession here. Get me my appointment.
That's right.
Get me my appointment. Are you? Go ahead.
I just want to touch on that. I think it was interesting because it was like a Sunday night and me and mom went out to dinner and the place was just packed, right? And I said to her, I'm like, inflation where? Because people are still going out to eat. And so what I've noticed inside of my business is people are not going to completely stop spending money with you. It might be, they might stretch their appointments out. A lot of people like to have pizza every Friday night. Maybe it's just pizza once a month on a Friday night, but people aren't going to completely stop. And so I agree with you, Dad. Sometimes when when you kind of see that hit your business, it can scare you. But as the leader, we just have to continue to pushing on because we know that there's ebbs and flows inside of business all the time.
Yeah.
Excellent.
So again, yeah, Stacy. So again, just for for our listeners and our entrepreneurs, that just begin to think: where am I vulnerable? Where am I over reliant in one area? Do I need to try and figure out how to expand that? Putting money aside, as hard as that is, especially if you're trying to get your business off the ground, you want to try and reinvest too. So, again, all challenging stuff, but welcome to the world of entrepreneurship, right? I mean, that's how it goes. But but last thing you want is to put a ton of work in, get the business on a relatively good momentum, just to have something unexpected happen that you could have anticipated. There's going to be things that we can't anticipate. But what hurts is when you've probably thought about it, or something, and you anticipate, but you didn't anticipate it enough to really start making and building some kind of plan around that. So that's what you don't want to happen after you've put the work in, to get a business rolling.
Absolutely. Well, great conversation today, guys. I think that this was very, very helpful, and definitely gets everybody thinking about what can we control and what can we even start to have a backup plan, and what are we leaning a little too much on inside of our business. So we hope that you guys have found this to be helpful today, and we hope to see and talk to you guys all soon.